So Hannu, today we live in a day where technologies are blended into the usual ways of business. Yeah, and a lot of people want to build a successful company, and some people imply that they want to build a unicorn, some people imply that they want to change the world. What is a successful PropTech company for you?
Well, I would say that what I define success, there's a lot of there's a US style that money is everything, and then sort of like I would say the explicit measures is very easy to measure in that way. But for me, success is progress. So progress, that whatever you do, in which kind of like value chain you progress. Of course, the progress is not always linear. That's pretty obvious. But I think it was almost like I was the other day before departing to Oslo to meet some of the customers and our partner there. I was walking the downstream CBD Helsinki, and then I was kind of in my own thoughts, just walking into a meeting, and all of a sudden somebody, hey Hannu, I was like, okay, who's that? And, oh, our customer. so the head of asset management was like, hey, how is it going, and blah blah blah, bit of like social chit chat, and he just said kind of like, that wasn't the reason he stopped me to say that, but he was, hey, you built a cool product, it's really valuable product, and that's really warmed my heart in a sense that, okay, we built a cool product which is actually valuable to the users. So that's kind of what could be seen as one of the what is successful. It's that you progress and then you really get the product into the hands of the people who really use it because they feel it's valuable to their work or beneficial to the business. So that's basically what I see as a very, I would say maybe it's a Nordic, I don't know if it's humble or not, but in a way to say what is a success.
Very fair. I would share this with you, this point of view, and I think that the influence that we make on people is actually also very important.
Yeah.
How do you think?
Actually, if I kind of one of our visions for when we started was power to the people, because a lot of tech stuff was still on a legacy. I even talked to one customer back in the days that they invested a big sum into a tool which was used by two people, sort of the CFO and then the controller. And there's like, where's the power to the people? Where's the sort of like the engagement of the users, and that put the user in the middle, sort of like to get the tech to work, and that reflects a lot of my thinking.
I think it's very important. As they say, you put people first and you put your own people first. Yeah. So if you take care of your employees, I think it was Bezos who said that.
Yeah.
I might be mistaken.
Yeah.
If you take care of your employees, they take care of your customer.
Yeah.
So talk about your team a little bit. What is your team like, and how did you come up with you've got a very international team, I know?
Yeah, I think it is pretty international, and I think it's been reflected in our DNA from the very start. I think one of the reasons is that founders, two are Finns and one is Australian living in Finland, but it was built from their ground up, so to speak. So we thought, okay, the only thing what we expect from the people is that they can do what they're, while we're in talks with them and we hire them, and secondly that the minimum level requirement is English language. They're not required to speak Finnish anyhow, and that of course was one of the things, because one of the founders is an English speaker. But also you can expand your pool of resources so much wider when you don't look at like that. And I think one of the best experience I had is actually one Iranian lady who came to Finland because his husband has got a scholarship in one of the universities, and she was staying in home and didn't really have anything to do, so to speak, and she was still like a graduated engineer from the University of Tehran. And of course, if you look at the papers, you would like, is this millennium? Let's look at the closer schools. But we hired her, and she became like a rock star almost. Like, of course, it wasn't like overnight success, but very, very shy. Really couldn't even speak English very well. But she really became a really, really good developer. So that kind of a story makes me sort of like my heart warm in a way that like we hire people who we feel confident upon. It's whatever nationality, ethnic background, beliefs, etc. We don't really care.
Do you share this view that actually success of startups or companies coming from smaller communities
Yeah.
or smaller countries relatively is actually the contribution that you make to empower people of different cultures, and eventually you adapt to sort of this export-oriented mindset from the beginning.
To some extent, it's been we have not expressed explicitly, but it's just kind of like what we have acted upon. I mean, that's the way we have acted, and that is the core beliefs. Believe in a way that yes, equal. I mean, it's a US term, equal opportunity, but that what we have been thinking from the very beginning, that open up the mind, and then you can actually expand, and the people can be also like from anywhere.
So, would I be correct to summarize that for you, success is actually impacting people, your people who work for you, but also the customers who
and
are
then you
buying
impact
your
the
product.
world, because it's through the people, for the people, through the people, by the people. So that's basically it.
Okay, but then still you mentioned that money is a good measure of success. Yeah. So when we talk about the valuation of a company, of a PropTech company, or when you are preparing fundraising, or you're preparing your pricing model, which is sometimes a problem for companies challenge to find the right fitting product market fit. It's not only about features but also about pricing. So commonly, and this is a part of what we are now investigating as a part of the digital first real estate approach, the so-called ROI-driven performance indicators. So how do you define that? How do you work with your customer to help you identify what is the actual impact that you're offering, not only in terms of the people response, but in terms of money? How do you help companies make or save money? Where do you find these KPIs?
It's a tough question, and it's a really tricky question, because if you think about digitalization in very, very broad perspective, I think there are basically two. Either you're disrupting something, or you're aligning or improving the processes. I mean, that's the first choice. And I would say, at least from my very perspective, that if you're going to go the disruptive way, you need to raise a lot of money, because it's like against the establishment, against the market, and so forth. Not maybe against the market, but certainly existing structures. You want to break the existing structures.
Against the status quo, so to speak.
That's it. And that's a total another ball game than offering a value benefit from the sort of like saving time, improving processes, improving value, etc. And we're as a company on the latter. So we're I would say that the people save time, they have more quality data, they simply just the everyday operations is just smoother, easier, and through that on the long term you can win business because you're more productive. So basically productivity tool. And then to put the exact price tag on that, of course, we can, and we in some of the cases we calculated the time savings and quality savings and the quality improvement and so forth. But when the day is over, it's about the when the people see and experience the product, then they either buy it or not buy it. It's not going to that I can afterwards sort of like argument of hey, this is how much, look at my calculation here, why don't you buy it? It just doesn't go that way. Of course it helps you when the other one is seeing the light, so to say, hey, this is really a productivity tool, this information gathering, and then sort of like information gathers up and also make the team more productive through easy share of the information and so forth. So those who understand the whole basic logic, they're easier to sort of like to have the discussion. The ones who don't see it, I really can't, remove or change their thinking that my convincing return on investment calculation. It just doesn't fly.
But it would be fair to say that we are dealing with normally corporate customers. Yes. So it's a B2B segment.
It is.
And when you are talking about selling phones, you can ride on experience. You can ride on that challenge that a person will buy the phone because it just feels right, or it's just a cool, looks cool, right, and so on. And we can appeal to these individual emotions. But when you're selling a corporate product, there are still people who make a rational decision, and money that is invested into the deployment of product has to be returned. And I agree with you that for many, in many respects, companies who make decisions about buying a product, it's just a person inside a bigger organization who has sympathy to you,
Yeah.
right? And I've experienced it, you've experienced it,
Yeah.
so I'm sure that you have your stories about that. And when you have this internal sponsor in a company who just lets you who helps you kind of be successful, who helps you get into it's one thing.
Yeah.
But ROI calculation, I would think you agree that it's also very important that you have the numbers right.
It is beneficial, and it is almost like has to be in a way. But there again, I would say there are two coins, and not like saying yes or no. It's a bit of ambivalent to be ambiguous, to be honest. But I had it the other day. Very long discussion, a very, very constructive discussion with the managing director of HIH, the HIH, the German really big real estate investment management company having AUM over 28 billion euros, the managing director with. And he said, in a way, he was very clear in thinking that, hey, look what happened to banks. It happened to took 20, 30 years, huge change. And he said the same will happen in the in investment management and it has happened already in other investment management areas other than real estate. But look at the banks. It will happen in real estate as well. And in a way, it's so obvious.
What did happen? Like, let's be specific. What did happen? Because my understanding is that banks lost the channel to the customer.
Yeah.
Is that
I think it's not that it lost the channel to the customer, but what happened to banks, it was like all paper-driven, all manual, no data transparency, a lot of like brokers doing like in the
calls and signatures.
And that all changed. It was totally digitalized, and the efficiency went like that. There's a new business models, new players, etc. So kind of like semi-disruptive, but also for the establishment also was a way to change the operation, so to speak. So that what happened in the banks, and I wasn't saying it. It was one of the largest German real estate investors saying, the managing director is in charge of that hey, look at the banks, Hannu, it happened, and he firmly believes it will happen. It's just a question when and in which scope, but it will eventually happen. And that comes to that, the yes, you need to show the figures, that's for sure, but it's on the in the evaluation process when you really calculate. And basically, it's not like the actual cost of the PropTech company. It is the change management. It is the time of the people, what they invest into. Okay, this is the new way of doing things. The product, sort of the internal product sponsors and that stuff. So that's more, I would say, more costly than the actual product cost itself, because there's so much into it, sort of like what I call digital transformation, because the apps, actually tools, enable that.
So it might not be very relevant, as you say, to measure just how much faster can you process a certain step in your current business process, but it's maybe we have to build a new aggregation layer where we look at the same business but from a different business process perspective, and then we can measure it correctly. But nevertheless, would you agree that eventually the financial results are probably the measurements?
When the day is over, that's the only what there is.
And how do you think, with regards to, for example, some of the companies that, as you said, like in order for you to really disrupt the world, like WeWork, for example, is trying to do, you have to have huge capital, huge partners supporting your burn rate in the beginning, because you have this really deep dive before you start monetizing. We know that from the venture capital world, from the valley,
consumer products and so forth.
And so it seems like the PropTech industry is adapting this VC model where they help finance the growth just in a VC scheme as the way to support the business. And to support the PropTech community ecosystem growing up. Do you think it's a proper way, or will it result in a bubble, or is there any alternative to the VC scheme that the real estate world is
yes
trying
and no.
to use?
Again, a bit of an ambiguous answer, but yes and no. To some extent, can you adopt that sort of like business to consumer type of like big money into, and then it scales like that? Not sure about that. So there's really two sides to that coin, and of course, like the real estate industry has taken a bit of a different angle, sort of like big real estate investors having their separate investment arms as a kind of like VC/incubators.
Right.
Whether that leads to results, it's also a really good question, because does the new stuff or new tech stuff from those investments really then sort of a suck into the operations.
Yeah.
Really a question. So is it broken in there? Don't really know. So.
But do you think it builds up a community, or it helps the ecosystem to grow? What's in your definition an ecosystem? Is that a playground organized by a corporate vendor? Say, this is your sandbox, you can play here, and then we'll see who grows? Or is it more like a community mindset that helps different companies interconnect and share best practices?
This is really, comes from my heart. It's not, what I can say, it's not, what is it not? It's not like sandboxes here defined by sort of like the existing structure, definitely not. What I see more a ecosystem is, let's take an example, Linux. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you know the story behind Linux, but it's very Nordic, and actually it's a Finnish.
I think it's good to tell this story to the audience.
Yeah, Linux is this open source software for databases, basically sort of operating systems. And it was created by a Finnish guy, Linus Torvalds, and it sort of like became big, and a lot of like biggest servers nowadays are run on Linux. So, but it's totally open source, totally open source. And what I sort of the best optimal sort of I would say ecosystem based on that there's a rules and there's an architecture, but no one is really controlling that who can join and so forth. It's a like open ecosystem in a way, but in a way that there's a rules and architecture. You know, where can I join and with which rules I can join this. But anyone is really, and anyone is sort of free to contribute and also develop the things. And that is the ecosystem to what I see really like the core of ecosystem thinking is that this is Linux thing. And that really is a good like what we can then say in an ecosystem in a real estate world. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's like interconnected apps with a certain data points agreed and sort of that, but not like that. There's a sandbox there, is a sandbox here, and then some sort of like legacy or some established, hey, this is the way they connect.
Yeah, so you don't set standard, you're saying you don't set standards top down, no. But you would rather select an organic growth and companies who find each other, and then they start to exchange best practices, data sets, and then it all kind of flows into an organic evolution.
Yeah,
I love that thought.
Yeah.
How about, you mentioned open source software, which is very important. Because I've been to a technology conference as opposite to the property conference where people talk about technologies, and I heard this saying that APIs have actually replaced or solved the open source problem, because in order for corporations to adapt this ecosystem mindset, they would have to agree with this open source approach, which is not always or I would say always is contradicting with the corporate mindset where everything is proprietary and owned.
And it's a culture, a bit of a new stuff.
It's like, a new exactly. But what do you think? What do you make of this? Like APIs actually solve the problem of open source?
I would say it's part of the solution. Definitely it is, because APIs is such a convenient way of connect data on data sets. So it's really like I think it's one of the key tools when changing the industry, because it's not the only, but it definitely is one of the things that connect things. And of course, you could say that if you look at like Salesforce, what did Salesforce do very, very successfully? It said that okay, we're a system. Yes, we are a system, but we kind of like open up, play around, so to speak. So we're totally open about the connectivity thing, and that has to see something. What I see that part of that also, that those established, what I say, legacy systems need to also follow that. Not have to, but I see that they can also be successful the way the Salesforce has been by opening up and building, and then the more sort of a smaller players can connect to those as well as any other sort of an ecosystem, and that again builds the sort of the bigger thing.
It makes me want. My next question was actually about scale, and it's very good that we actually got into this topic, because the question is what it takes to scale. Yeah, because that's the question that we all are entrepreneurs. We all ask ourselves, like, what does it actually take to get that momentum so we reach the hockey stick? So in this case, would you agree that building, and I admire what you've done at Assetti, because I think this ecosystem approach from the beginning, having an open API, having an open connectivity has helped you get the scale where you are already, and I'm sure that this is the right way to continue. But can you open up a little bit about your experience with scaling up through partnerships, through opening up APIs with foreign companies? What have you learned in the process? Is it easy? Is it easier than working with corporate customers, working with the same? Or who has, the competition versus collaboration mindset?
There's a bit of a warning saying that if it would be easy, everybody would be doing it.
Precisely.
It's a warning saying.
It's a relative notion, I agree.
But still, what do you need? You need to be consistent, persistent, and you need to have the grit. Simple.
Okay, that's good.
But you need to have a very, very good API which is fully documented, that you just don't talk, but then you say, walk the talk in a way. Hey, I've been embracing the API for ages. That okay, I want to use it. Well, there's the documentation, there's the token. Just take your data points and their open account. So you need to walk the talk in that sense. But there is no shortcut to that. You just be consistent, be systematic, and then keep repeating, because it's when you hear for the first time, it's like, what is this? And then open connectivity. People ask, okay, all my data out there?
Am I going to give all my data away?
They're gonna
all my selling points.
Yeah, so that's because I think the crucial here is that the real estate industry, how have you made historically money? It's about holding information.
Exactly.
You know more
about fishing in the muddy waters.
Yeah. Gray-haired men meeting in some restaurant, and this and this wheeling, dealing, and everything so close, very close, and then you come this open connectivity, and openness is like,
brutal honesty approach.
So forget it. Like in a way, the first reaction, culture. But I think there's it's a safe environment to connect in a very trusted way, and that's the whole point. That's totally different than you just open up in a way, but you have the structure, you have these processes and so forth in place in order to really implement the connectivity. But then it really becomes really, really powerful. You can think about everything from acquiring a property to managing it, the property, leasing operations, reporting, everything. It works quite nicely.
Let's talk about platformization a little bit, because trust is a keyword that you mentioned. When we talk about opening up your data, opening up your APIs, you basically start relying on the other company keeping the same version of the API so that your solutions can talk. So trust is the basic notion that is implemented into this architecture from the beginning. And there are platforms out there that help you, build API connectors. Can you talk about your experience, how you have built your open API, and have you used any external systems to do that?
And now you should talk to Sean Merritt, our CTO.
I have. That's a more specific topic. Let's stay on the broad level. We don't want to go into the technical details.
But I think when you mentioned the trust is really like, if you think about any kind of a platform in a way, it's about the trust. Do you trust to go somewhere and book your room through Airbnb, or do you trust to take one of the big American sort of like Uber or something? It's about the trust. So there's two sides to trust. First one is this sort of like the contractor trust, then or safe, so to speak. Then is this technical trust, so the technology is built in a way that it can be hacked on. But the second is the community. Community is self-regulating, the feedback and so forth. I firmly believe that any ecosystem which will evolve out of it's also built in within the community, that the community will, dealing, and then you get the credit points or whatever is part of that. So I think those three things need to be in place in order that to scale as an ecosystem.
Okay, and
that's why we've done a pretty good API with a very well documentation and with the sort of like the latest art out of the technology.
Thanks. The last question I'm still going to ask, the same question, but with regards to the business. So what does it take to scale a business?
What does it take to scale a business? First of all, the product itself needs to be scalable, so you don't need to do any kind of very custom.
So product architecture,
technology, and you need to build as much of possible of the feature set from the kind of configurability in a way that you configure things enough coding things, because then you get all over the places, and it's almost like the legacy systems when they have different instances. found in the 90s or 2000s. Like, hey, we have like 150 different businesses.
We all know. That's on our payroll. Architects are here, and programmers are here.
So the question is like the architecture has to be the scale. Business model has to be scalable. The pricing model has to be scalable, and then you need to have a very approachable, kind of a value proposition, and that easy to take into use and really easy to use, and there's a support. But the only thing what I'm kind of like challenging myself daily is like product like ours, it's a software as a service. So easily it could be used in Australia. It could easily used in Alaska or whatever to manage your smaller or bigger portfolio. No problem with from technical point of view. But this is the human side of like proximity, mental proximity. Oh, where's this product from? But they're so far away. Can we really kind of trust in a way, even though that the product itself is like, it could be everywhere. So that one of these scalability issues is still like, because the industry has been really reflected by sort of like dealing with people. So you just don't go.
Precisely. We are all in people's business.
Yeah, so human to human interaction, and that really is part of the puzzle.
Part of the ecosystem. Yeah. And I want to come back to the beginning of the discussion where you were talking about your experience with your international team. And we know that language is the base of any culture.
Yeah.
And so how have you used that aspect in realizing Assetti as a product? Is that, how difficult is it to make it multilingual from the start? Because that's what I admired in Assetti from the beginning, is that the approach that being multilingual, multicultural, configurable, adapt to different standards.
I think there are two sides to it. First is the culture, and then there's the industry. And I come from the industry, and I already experienced in my sort of like home market that if you look at the global investment market, they're all talking English. And I would say that most of the money is talking Anglo-American. There might be Chinese money and Korean money on the long term more on the table.
Nowadays it might change too.
Yeah, it might change a little bit, but there's still it's been reflected by Anglo-American. Right. So English. That's all. So that's okay. But when you go to local operations and you have some, property manager doing some inspection, taking pictures, they're not that confident of actually using English, as they might be using that, but a bit of a like, can I really express, because there's a big American investor there, German fund, or Korean investment something, and I'm a bit of like hesitant to use English. So we're thinking it might be that we come from a small country where like my mother tongue is Finnish. When I depart Helsinki airport to see a customer, I really can't expect them to talk Finnish. So that's like that.
Yes.
You need to adapt. You need to take the Swedish, Norwegian, Danish. You need to take German. You need to take French. You need to take Korean. You just need to adapt in order to take your product out there. And that's why we already from the beginning said we'll be multilingual. We can take on board so you can just simply switch from the UI and Assetti, talks whatever. It's again like this people thinking. It's people thinking that when you go there, you feel comfortable. Actually, the application is talking my language, it's talking the language of this industry, and it's talking my mother tongue.
And how about, I agree with you fully that property is the local market and technology is the global market, but we're talking about scalability of it as business. Does it mean that you have to have, like Microsoft, offices in every country with multiple specialists who would help you translate help files, so to speak? Or do you rely on community and scaling, or do you rely on special new companies that help you connect?
I would say the latter. We're looking for partners. We're looking for the sort of like communities to sort of networks to join. That's definitely. I'm a strong believer in networking and building those ecosystems. Also, people to people.
And what has been your best experience over the past years? I know you travel a lot across Europe and the world, globally, including the U.S. and Americas and the Asian countries.
Asia is still kind of like we have leads there. And we are now in talks with one Australian bigger corporation. So.
But the question is, when you travel the world, when you use other platforms, not just going there by yourself and presenting your company, but using other platforms like conferences or different existing and emerging platforms, what has been your, let's say, best examples of what actually works?
Really good question, because it's been changing over the years. I can already say years.
It's been an evolution already, yes.
It's been an evolution already. Also in the PropTech events. I think the most successful, if you look at this simply like the figures and how many leads, how many potential partners have we met, was a year ago in meeting PropTech. It's quite amazing, like how much, and we got also exposure to sort of that part of Europe, which we went really with the product yet. But I would say that in Europe, the Exporel has grown lately, a lot. And I have a really good story, and this is true. When we were the first time in Exporel 2014, we had the first MVP, and off we go. Hey, let's go and see, and go and show the product.
There was no innovation stand. I remember those days.
Literally, they laughed us out. What are you doing here? This is not a tech show. This is like property, immobilien. And we were like, oh shit, shall we? Let's forget. It's not going to fly ever. And now if you look at the Exporel, it just turned, 180 degrees, 360, and it's an innovation, tech, digital. I say still like a lot to do. They're still very Excel driven. It's still very manual, so forth. But the awareness and that's really naturally happening there. So
and the mindset is changing.
Yeah, mindset is so. I had a chat with one of the biggest things. Said, look at the banks. It will happen. So they really taken. So it changed a lot. So I would say I really put, and Exporel is one of the big shows.
Maybe as a side note, I remember those days really well, of course. And for us, the early bird, so to speak, we started at the same time as companies like VTS and some others who are now unicorns started. And of course, all the challenges that we've talked through, because my first company is also based in Finland. There is this period when you want to catch the momentum, and then you find yourself in an internal struggle always as an entrepreneur. Should I continue? Should I go back to my office job?
It's a one continuous struggle.
Exactly. But what keeps you going? When you go into a conference like you experience, because I have similar experience from 2012 and 13 when we were showing our slideware to the companies and they were laughing us out. What keeps you going and what keeps you motivated besides the impact that we talked about on the people? What is it? What happens internally? Tell us, what's the mechanism for PropTech entrepreneurs to just keep going when things aren't working out as they were expecting?
The material impact is the biggest, and when you meet the customers and they're happy, it just makes you smile. Like as I said, the other day I just stumbled upon a customer in downtown Helsinki, and he genuinely said, "Hey, cool product." And so it really made my heart warm that we're doing something right. We're definitely doing something right, and that sort of like justifies. It's the French term raison d'être. The reason to exist. It really is the one. And those are the moments when there are of course some appearances. So I would say the moments that you're a bit of a tired, you're catching a flight 20 past 11 somewhere in a big European city, and you just, oh my God, all the other people already like
at home playing with their kids.
Luckily at home, and it's like, what the heck am I doing here? So far away, and still, a long way to go. But I think it's the customers that really, that's because it's for the people, the change and impact by the people, and that on the long term, because I firmly believe it will come.
I think it's very interesting that you said that raison d'être in French. It actually resonate. Might be a connection there. Because I agree with you that the resonance that you get from customers and the people who work with you is actually the most rewarding thing.
It is.
But we don't forget about money anyway. So I wish you all the best in your business and the company growth.
Thank you.
And I hope that we'll appear again to celebrate the next round of fundraising or the next millionth customer. Thank you very much for this talk. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.